Welcome to Let's Talk About Health, an informational podcast that gives you insights on health and fitness from experts themselves that you can apply directly to your own personal health and fitness stories. Come join me today to hear all about what they have to say on health and fitness. Hello,
Hi, Bhavna.
how are you?
I'm doing well, thank God. How
Good,
are you doing?
good. I know it's a Sunday. You still working?
Still working. Sunday weekend here. I'm in Egypt, so the weekend is on Friday, Saturday. Sunday is back to
Are you
work.
serious?
Mhm. Yes, indeed.
I
Yeah,
did
yeah,
not know that. Egypt has Friday, Saturdays off.
yeah. Several countries in the region do that. It's
So
nice
it
because
must be
by
fun.
Wednesday you're almost there,
Right.
right? Thursday night you're like, okay, last day. It's nice.
That's fun. We should try it here in the United States. It will be fun.
You know? How is Sunday going for you in New York?
Just started. So
hmm
it's good. The weather is good. I have a few plans with my friends after, but it's good. No complaint.
Beautiful. Awesome.
Yes, let's get started. Are you excited about
Okay.
today's podcast?
Yes, yes, looking forward to that conversation.
Yeah,
I'm
I
glad
know
we made it happen.
we've been going back and forth trying to set dates. I was in India and then there were New Year's, holidays, so many things happening, but I'm so glad that here we
Yeah,
are and finally doing the podcast together.
indeed.
One thing that we're both passionate about is healthcare and helping people in times of need when it comes to health and healthcare systems. And there are so many questions since I've started practicing. There are so many questions coming up in my mind about healthcare system throughout the globe, which is
Mm.
why I wanted to start this global podcast where we talk about healthcare systems. And I am so grateful that we connected and we're here to talk about healthcare system, especially in times of war. So that's going to be our main focus for today's conversation. And without any further ado, let's dive in. So, can you tell me how would you look at health and fitness?
So, I mean, there's, the very first time you reached out and you said, well, would you be willing to have a talk? I said
Yeah,
yes, with an acknowledgement that health and healing doesn't happen in silos or in isolation, and the wider context has to be taken into consideration. So,
mm-hmm.
I've mentioned earlier, I live in Cairo, Egypt. I'm 300 kilometers away from the border with
Right,
Gaza, and and so I cannot speak of health and healing and how to, without addressing the fact that
right.
today, I'll dive right in, if you allow me. The fact that
Let's
today
go.
we are witnessing, every single day for the past 4 months, a ethnic cleansing and genocide. So it's a weird it's a weird place to be, because it's like, let's talk about health,
Right,
let's talk about healing, let's talk about what it means conceptually, and at the same time, let's understand that this has to be applied, in the midst of life, in the midst of
right.
atrocities that are being broadcasted live, a genocide that is being broadcasted live, and it's so traumatic. And I'm not gonna even pretend to know and to understand, what it's like to be in Gaza today. Like 4 months into it, almost 30,000, people have been killed, more than 10,000 children have been murdered, 100,000 people have been injured, have disappeared. I mean, it's just it's quite amazing to see that, and I think it's our duty when we speak, when we're in healing spaces, as healers and practitioners and people who are helping others to heal. I think that has to be taken into consideration, because it is impacting everybody, whether you care or not. And that's a question for us, to ask
Right.
ourselves a few, later on, why should I care? What can I do about it? These are all valid questions. Um, but understanding that your environment will impact your mental health, your physical health, your social health, and so on and so forth. So I'm not sure where I want to start, other than acknowledging that if you want to talk about health, let's talk about the environment where you
Right.
operate, right? I think that's an important piece, because many of us are like, I'm just going to meditate. I'm just going to, everything is okay, and I'm just going to throw positive affirmations. And I think it's very uh, counterproductive
Mm-hmm.
to be in denial, both about what's going on out there and about what's going on inside of me
Mm-hmm.
too. Right? That denial, I think, is just pushing us further away from our own inner experience and
Right.
from connecting with others, and it creates disconnection as opposed to building bridges, acknowledging what's the reality out there inside here, and take it from there. Am I making sense here?
Exactly. I 100% agree with you. And since you asked the questions, and I would like to take that question further and ask, why should I care? We live in one society. I'm far
Mm,
away from Gaza, from people. And
yeah.
that's a huge question, because I myself, at my location where I practice, I was discussing it with few of my patients, and we were just looking up. We were just looking at videos, and we were like, "No, we cannot see it. It breaks my heart even to just watch those videos, to watch the kids, their eyes. We couldn't even watch it." But then it's one society, like you said. It's definitely going to impact us in future. It's impacting us already.
Mhm,
So that's the question. How would you say that? Why should people care,
mhm.
and what to do with that?
You know, thank you for that question. It is a valid question. It's a question I've had in several conversations
Hmm.
with people who told me, there's many atrocities out there,
Right.
and I can't care about everything. And I understand that healthy boundaries have to be put in place. Um, and I don't think that watching images of people being pulled out of the rubbles, and children, being killed, and all day, I don't think it's helpful. I don't think it's healthy, and it doesn't help anybody. So let's understand. At the same time, it's not one or the other. It's not like I care and I'm going to do this, and that's all I'm going to talk about. That's all I'm going to do, or I'm just not going to care.
Right.
Um,
Hmm.
so I mean, the most honest answer would be like, if you don't care about what's going on, it's between you and your conscience. I'm nobody to tell you like you should care about this, you should care about that. Do whatever you think is right. Um,
Hmm.
is again is between you and your conscience, you and God, whatever your beliefs are. Um, for me, it's more of a daily reminder that it's not happening to them. That whole idea, that it's not about us, it's about them.
Hmm.
Um, I think it's that illusion of separatedness is like we're separate.
Hmm.
Well, no, like you know on a spiritual level, and on an energetic level, well, it's all one. So what's happening there is happening here, within yourself as well. And on a more, I want to say, prosaic, a little bit more, down to earth level. And here I'm talking primarily to people in the US, and a reminder that your tax dollars, my tax dollars, I pay taxes in the US, are paying for that genocide. I
Right.
think just for that, that should be a reason enough, right? If your viewers, are in the US right now, just a reminder that we're paying for the bill. So,
Hmm.
so that in itself should be a reason enough for you to be like, what's going on here? Why I'm not okay with that. Um,
Hmm.
and if you're okay with that, then, again, it's between you and your conscience. And I'd love to hear what you think. I'd love to hear what people watching or thinking why should we care about what's going on, right?
I think at the end of the day, we're all human. I keep telling that to my patients because I come from India. I'm working in New York. New York is so diverse. It's a blessing to be working here because I have patients, I have patients from Egypt, from South America, from India, from Pakistan, from Nepal, from Bangladesh, from all over the world. And at the end of the day, when I'm with them, when I see their pain, it's just one human and their pain. I'm treating that human without the color, caste, gender, or any religion. And we keep talking about it because I'm very cultural. I love from where I came. I love my roots. So I love talking about being Indian and how we eat, how we make everyone fat. That's our way of showing love that we're feeding you. And those are small things. But I always say at the end of the day, if I bleed, it's going to be red blood. If you bleed, it's going to still be red blood. So I care for you irrespective. And health is so beautiful. Medicine and health was so beautiful that you should care without any restrictions, without
Yeah.
any boundaries.
I, I, and just to piggyback on your, you know, I'm nobody, and I don't feel entitled to tell people what to do, what they should care about, why they
Mhm.
should care. So again, it's an invitation for everybody to reflect on their own response to what's
Right.
going on in Palestine. Having said that, I think it's also really interesting for anybody who wants to heal, who wants to embark on that journey of deep healing. And I'm not talking about just like the typical definition of like the absence of illness, it's okay, I'm not hurting
Right.
anywhere, or I think it's a surface level healing. I'm talking about a deeper healing on an emotional, spiritual level, which requires, if I'm interested in doing so, requires for me to really look at my own biases and my own blind spots. And I think it's really interesting, for example, to see, and I can, even though I've been living in Egypt for many years, I'm also, obviously, I'm French, connected to Europe, and I've lived in the US for many years as well. So I'm connecting, and I'm a Westerner. And it's painful because I see, 1 year ago, like such a global
Hmm.
solidarity, or not a global solidarity, a Western solidarity, shall I say, for Ukraine, which was warranted.
Right.
I do think, my and I speak directly to some of my Ukrainian brothers. What has happened is horrible, and you should get the solidarity and you should get the support, and people should speak up. And 1 year later, when 3 times the amount of civilians have been killed in a fraction of the time of that war, which is not even a war. I mean, like a war is like two states with two armies fighting each other. Here we're talking about a systemic,
Hmm.
killing and destruction, a killing of civilians, destructions of life, culture, civilian infrastructures. This is destruction of life. Um, and and I find it fairly, quite nauseating,
Right.
to be honest, like to hear these that discourse of like, well, but they have a right to defend themselves. Israel has a right to defend themselves, and all that crap, which is like, but how is that burying, killing 10,000 children, 30,000 people, disappearing 100,000 people, destroying an entire
Hmm.
population, like ethnic cleansing? How does that contribute? How is that self-defense? How is that contributing to the safety of your people? So sorry for diverging like a little bit, but here my point is that deeper healing requires for me and for anybody who wants to embark on that journey to really look at their implicit biases. Do I care more about these people that I care about these?
Right.
And a fair question would be, well, imagine that conflict was inverted, and that 30,000 Israeli civilians had been killed, 10,000 Israeli kids had been buried. What do you think would be the answer? And I'm talking specifically about the West because the rest of the world sees what's happening. The global South sees what's happening. So the West is just, we're so isolated in, it's like we have blinders right now, and it's just, we're completely missing the opportunity to acknowledge the suffering, the pain, the destruction that's going on, and to show up and say, this has to stop, right? So going back to my implicit biases, why do I care about these people? Why do I not care about these people? Are there deep layers of racism, right? If there were not brown people, like, Ukrainian, like I know in France, in my own country, people fell over each other to make sure that they would express their support to Ukraine, and how horrible and how can that happen, and oh my goodness.
Yeah.
1 year later, with everything that's happened in Gaza, it's like some people speaking up, but the narrative is just, it's appalling. There's a complete double standards, is what I'm trying to say in too many words.
How
Makes
did
sense?
your 100%, 100%, how did your journey in this start? When did you realize that you care about these people and you care deeply to have a voice for them?
I, 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 that's interesting because I've had a conversation with a group of people, and at some point it was a pretty heated conversation as to like why should we bring this on the table, and why should we take a stand. And at some point, some of the questions that were coming my way is like, so wait, so you're not Palestinian, you don't live there, blah 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 blah, as in like, well, and therefore, why should you care? And I'm fairly disturbed by these kind of questions. Like the question is less, why do I care, rather than why don't you care? And again, it's between you and your conscience.
Correct.
So I don't speak for nobody. I don't speak for Palestinians. I don't speak for, like, do I need to explain why, the reasons why I care, and like the fact that, because I'm Muslim and I've been living in this country for many, many years, and blah, blah, blah. And like, I've been to Palestine before, like, but what does that mean? Do I need to justify the fact that I think these are atrocities that need to stop? And that I'm because I see that from the standpoint of a nervous system practice, of somebody specialized in nervous system regulation. I work on trauma on a daily basis. I help people overcome trauma. And what I'm seeing here, I can't even fathom, like what's happening right now is going to take decades to be able to heal that wound. And at the same time, I feel like if anything, right, the death of these Palestinian brothers and sisters, if anything, I hope will allow us to awaken and to go deeper, and to quote Master Rumi, the wound is where the light enters. And I feel like this is creating such a deep wound within our societies, that I'm hoping this is where we can actually start to acknowledge like these double standards, and look into some deeper issues, and understand that we're not separate. So what do I care is irrelevant. I care because I see people just next, it's next door. It's next door to me. We human. We one. So there's a global movement of like oneness and sacredness and sacred unity, but we have to walk that talk. And I'm specifically talking to healing spaces and healers. We talk about unity consciousness and all of that. Yes, but let's get our hands down, into the mud, because the soil right now has blood, and we have to address this. We have to address this and look into these deeper issues. So for me, when we talk about healing, there's two things. Number one, being careful not to numb out, because right now many of us every now and then are numbing out because it's like, this is heavy.
Yeah.
It's you know it's heavy to every day see and always this genocide is still going and it's still getting worse, and it's like, how worse can it get? And yet every single day it gets worse, and so obviously it's difficult to watch. And as
Right.
I mentioned earlier, I don't believe that's like spending my days on IG is the solution. It doesn't help anybody. At the same time, I do feel like that conversation needs to be kept alive, because I have been told,
Right.
here and there that it's old news. People don't want to talk about it. They're tired of it. There's even, and I don't mean that, I don't mean to judge. I understand there's a compassion fatigue as well. Right? There is a compassion fatigue, but people are like tired of discussing it, of seeing these massacres, and like they'd like to move on to something a little bit newer, more, maybe more exciting. Um, but I think that's complete bypass of the reality, and missing the opportunity again to just stay with it and acknowledge that there's still something very wrong with us as a global society. If this is happening on a regional level, on a national level, understand that in um, in Arabic there's a saying, there's a proverb that says الجزء يمثل الكل, which means the part represents the whole. So if you so there's a parallel between the macro and the micro.
Right.
That conflict that's happening there is happening here,
Correct.
and vice versa. And for as long as I haven't, so all I can do right now, I can't do anything in Gaza. I can't, and yes, you can boycott and diverse and sanction, and you can keep the conversation alive, and you can pressure your local representatives. There's a whole bunch of things you can do. But to go deeper in that healing, I need to look into also my own sense of like, it's them versus me, or it's us versus them. Like this whole dichotomy, I think is counterproductive.
100%. I agree with you. What you said when you started the topic, like you were asked, why do you care? Instead of the question being, why don't you care? We live in the 21st century where war is still alive. Why? Why are we fighting for the war to end? That should not even be a question. There should not be a war to begin with. There should not be so much hate to begin with. We are fighting, we are getting upset every day because you're giving a reason. Because you are not understanding that you don't have the right to kill. You don't have the right to not provide health services, which is going to be my next question to you is, what about the healthcare system like what's going on? Because there's war, there's curfew, there's so much happening that people who everyone needs healthcare system. Like 2 days back, someone I knew was had COVID, and just yesterday I met a good friend of mine. She had an infection. So the small things where you need healthcare, and it's every human right to get your healthcare, to just get your attention and health. So where is that attention? Where is the system in all of this?
Or are you referring to the US? Are you referring to what are you referring to
In the
exactly?
in places where there is war going on.
Oh, I mean, if you want to talk about Gaza right now, there's nothing. There's nothing. Hospitals have been um, bombed, they've been attacked, which is part again of a systematic attempt, to make sure that people do not have access to healthcare, which I think is uh, I'm running out of descriptive, appalling, because it's
Right.
it's part of an even more vicious strategy to say, well, we're going to make sure that these people don't have access to healthcare. Like if they get wounded, they'll get finished. And it's just, it makes me sick in my stomach when I think about it. And so at the same time, understanding that then when it, I'm in no place, to describe and to explain what's going on in a war zone, other than understanding that when this comes down, obviously you want to be able to regulate as much as possible, because the higher your stress, the more the less your immune system and your body systems in general will be able to function. But it's easy to say that. Like if you bombard it day in and day out for 4 months, if you're being displaced, every few days, how can you not be in a high state of stress? So again, going back to the question of like, what about, as we're witnessing this, I think we need to work as hard as possible to keep ourselves in a place where we can still engage, where we can still see that big picture.
Right.
Because the more I'm going to the more I'm going to be in a heightened state of stress, the more difficult it becomes for me to see that big picture, right? The more that awareness shrinks, and therefore I find myself in a state where I'm not. It becomes increasingly difficult to communicate. It becomes increasingly difficult to think clearly, to make the best decisions for myself and my family, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So when we speak of being healthy in light of, all that crazy world around us, I think it's really interesting to see this as a dynamic state of balance.
Right.
That's what health is about. This is not a rigid state of like, okay, I've done everything I needed to do, and therefore I achieved that complete state of physical, social, mental, emotional well-being, and that's it. And I need to work hard to stay there. I think it's more interesting to see it as a dynamic state, and the goal is to find balance, and most importantly, to actually be able to respond appropriately to the situation. So if I'm in if I'm not in a place where I feel safe, and that applies not just to people, who are in war zones, but I think that applies to a lot of people in the US who do not have access to healthcare, who do not have food security, who do not have a steady job or job, or they may be working 3 jobs, but that may not be enough, actually, et cetera, et cetera. So obviously, in that case, that state of stress is appropriate. And at the same time, if I'm stuck in that state of stress, then my health, right, will be negatively impacted. So for us to understand that the goal is not to be in a rigid state of being okay and being positive and everything is okay, but to be able to pendulate and to make that shift between right here, right now, like everything sucks, I'm angry, or maybe I'm dealing with grief, I'm dealing with anger, I'm dealing with a lot of things that are real, that are normal human experiences. Can I give myself permission to feel that, to experience it, to move through me, because there's also a gift behind it, right? And every now and then we acknowledge sometimes where it's like, okay, and right here, right now, from that place, having processed some of my anger, some of my sadness, maybe there's less pressure in my nervous system, there's more space, and oftentimes there's more gratitude, there's more clear-mindedness. And I see that so often with the people I work with, where some of the most powerful group processes that we have are not the processes when we like, tell me everything that's great with your life and let's go into positive affirmations. And I'm not saying there's no place for that. I'm just saying that connecting to what's labeled as negative emotions is actually very liberating when I have someone somebody was like, a few days ago, I had a student who was like, I'm afraid of connecting to my anger. And so we took the time within the context of that group process for him. We created a space where he was able to connect it to his anger, to
Right.
connect to his anger. It's it's liberating because like, oof, there's power.
Yeah.
There's power to speak up. There's power to stand up for yourself, to protect your family and yourself. There's power to establish healthy boundaries, etc., etc., etc. To say that this is unjust and this should not
Right.
happen. There's a lot of benefits in me, connecting to my anger, just to give that example. And I'm French, I'm professionally trained in repressing my feelings and emotions. This is what we do. Like, this is how we roll. We just, like, in the subway in Paris, like, not a peep. Nobody talks, even not kids. We repress from a very early age. And yet, what a pity, because there's power.
Uh-huh.
There's power in being able to connect to these emotions that today have been labeled negative or counterproductive, and it's a disservice. It's a disservice to our health. I think it's a disservice to our ability to be together in community.
Mm-hmm.
Because these conflicts, and that brings me back to what's happening. These conflicts are on many levels within myself, within my household, within my community, within my country, between countries. All these conflicts, as painful as they may be, I think I do believe that they're an opportunity to grow closer to each other somehow, in some
Right.
weird, twisted way. I'd like to think that suffering is not in vain. I'd like to think that we can learn from that. I'm looking at Ireland and what happened there. I'm looking at different countries where really there was historical feud and bombing and killings, and eventually people were able to come together. So, inshallah, as we say, God willing, I'd like to hope that there's a shift right now, but that requires for us to stay awake. Am I
Right.
making sense
Definitely.
here?
There are so many layers to just emotions. Funny enough, my name in Hindi. So my name is Bhavna. You know the meaning of Bhavna? It
No?
means feelings and emotions. So while you were talking, it's so evident that we as humans are not so simple. We are packed in layers of emotions that we're too scared to even scratch the surface and see what's within us, who we really are, and where do we come from, what our beliefs are. Unless and until we scratch the surface and we're put in situations like life, like I always say, school is just a way to take all the education, but life is completely different. It's different because you're actually dealing with humans, you're actually dealing with people. You will have to take defeat. You will just have to shut up sometimes, just because that's the right thing to do. So there's so many layers to just being human. There's so many layers to exploring your emotions. So you put it so beautifully, and it was a different approach to what I look at health as a whole. And it's not, I always say it's physical, mental, spiritual, social well-being. But you are so right. That's not, you're not gonna have 100% of everything every time. And even when you achieve it, life is going to happen. So it's about the fluctuations and how you deal with that. That's so beautifully and practically put. So thank you for that.
No, thank you. And just to go back here, to the beginning, maybe as we're nearing the end of this conversation, let me go back to the beginning of you were asking about healing, because what you just said, they reminded me that I think healing is also, from what I've witnessed, in that for the past 20 years, working with people dealing with HIV and AIDS, cancer, victims of torture, domestic abuse, you name it. I've worked with a wide variety of people who taught me so much about life, right? Because they made me aware of the fact that true healing really means getting to know yourself, really true healing means removing these layers of what you think you should be, of what society expects from you,
Right.
and getting to know yourself in a much deeper, meaningful way.
Yeah.
And and the reason also for the past 10 years, 9 years, I've been working with people uh, dealing with the cancer diagnosis. And one of the most powerful processes that we have is to when we actually get together and we practice authenticity.
Right.
And that sounds both so simple and challenging at the same time. Because how often you keep it real? Ask yourself, I'm asking you, I'm asking the people watching, how often are you fully yourself?
Right.
As in like you saying what you're thinking, you being honest with that person, you don't care about what they're gonna say, not because you don't care about the person, but because you want to be in integrity and you want to say that truth. Um, and so it's really interesting to think of healing, I think, as a reconnection to yourself. And then if you want to take that conversation further, maybe for another time, when you get to know yourself, I think that's when you connect to the divine.
Right.
And I don't mean to be proselytic here, but I'm just speaking of my own personal experience,
Mm-hmm.
which started from a more quote unquote, way like let's work on dealing with the trauma and the issues. And then I realized that the deeper I was going within myself, the more spiritual and divine it became.
Right.
And what a gift, right? To understand that, oh, these traumatic experiences that created adversity in my life actually forced me to go deeper within myself. They forced me just that it's just like these diamonds under pressure, right? It's like that diamond is born from like tremendous amount of pressure and not from ease and comfort.
Mm-hmm.
Like a life of ease of comfort sounds lovely, but it's this, it's not going to happen for anybody. Like life is going to slap you in the face one way or the other. And so the question is, am I able to accept with humility this invitation from these traumatic experiences to go deeper into my healing, to get to know myself better? What's important to me? What are my life priorities? What are the people that count the most?
Right.
What is it that I need to say, what I need to do before, the lights are out? Because time passes by so very quickly. And we don't know. Nobody knows, how long do I have left? That's a fair question. You think that, oh, well, yes, people in Gaza are more at risk right now than we are, but isn't it maybe just an illusion? I may go out right now, and fall and hit my head, and
Mm-hmm.
that's it. So why shall I wait? Why shall I wait? Uh, this adversity, this big wake-up call. Well, I mean, most of us will actually. Most of us will wait for that big challenge that's going to force us to heal. But what I'm saying is that it's a beautiful opportunity to reconnect to myself, and then in some ways, I think again to the divine and to a more spiritual part of
Right.
me. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
And
100%.
and the last thing I want to say
Yeah.
here, which I think also is tremendous for me, is quite amazing, is that the most what makes the people of Gaza and Palestinians so resilient is their faith. And maybe that's a conversation for another time, but see, have you seen their resilience? Have you seen that they're surrendering to God and saying, I mean, nobody else is helping out, so we're just going to surrender here. Um, and it's both very humbling and to me very impressive, and that's interesting that so many people around the world are like, wait, let me look into that religion, let me look into the system of belief, let me look into the Quran, let me look. How can they be so
Right.
strong? Have you? I'm sure you've seen mothers and fathers, burying their kids. I can't even just thinking about it. My heart sinks a little bit. I'm like, my stomach shrinks, and I'm like, I see them just like kissing their children's eyes as they close them for the last time,
Right.
And I'm like, how can they still stand? And they stand because they have faith, right? And so for us to connect also to that and to tap to your own sense of faith and understanding that without I don't want to oversimplify anything, but I just want to say that faith goes a long way.
Right.
And whatever you're going through, whatever I'm going through, when I'm able to say, okay, I trust there's a reason for that,
Yeah,
that's an amazing source of resilience.
definitely. Definitely. I agree with you. Faith is very important. We wouldn't be here if we didn't have faith, if we didn't have a mission for tomorrow. I wouldn't be able to wake up, get out of bed if I didn't know what I wanted for tomorrow. And a lot of that has come through faith. I did not, like, we all were, I started as an atheist, and I was like, no, I don't, I believe in science, I believe in medicine.
Yeah,
And slowly life happened, and I was put in situations where you could tell that I saw something that science or medicine would not be able to explain. It was very magical, and that's when I started finding my faith, my belief, and just I I, I humbled. I started becoming more human, and started accepting that there is something more divine and more powerful, and that's more powerful than all of us. And the only thing that we can do is just trust and have faith. So
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So 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 for anybody listening, and I include myself, I just want to remind myself and everybody to keep that conversation alive. I
Mm-hmm.
want to remind myself and everybody to pray,
Yeah.
um, to pray for the people of Gaza,
Yeah.
to pray for their healing, for their protection, um, because I think it is one of the most important thing
Mm-hmm.
that one can do. Yeah, and again, I don't want to give advice to anybody, but for me, that's a pillar because number one, it helps me, keep it together, and I also, I see that as a powerful force right now because there's definitely, that battle as we've discussed both within myself and on the national and multinational level of good good and evil of life and death of like what's happening right now. And so yeah, if anybody got anything out of this podcast, it is definitely number one from my teachers.
Mm-hmm.
Anything that was unhelpful was from my ego. Please forgive me, as one of my teachers would say. And let us, let's continue to keep our Palestinian brothers and sisters in our hearts, in our prayers, and may we all be safe.
Would you like to say a prayer?
I just did. That was that was it. That was it. I mean,
That was beautiful. I loved it. Thank you so much for this
thank you, Dr.
beautiful
Now.
conversation. And it was um it was enlightening to me as well. And I know we it's never too late to talk about important issues happening around us, and we're all a part of the same world. We need to speak. We need to say, hey, this is wrong, stop it. And I am so happy that you have the will to say it. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, Pavna. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Blessings to all.
Okay, I'll
Take
let
care.
you go. It was lovely. I hope to talk to you very soon.
We'll be in touch. Take care, everybody.
Bye
Peace.
bye. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to our talk about health. You can follow me on Instagram at bhavna.devnani, on Facebook at bhavna devnani, and we'll leave all the information in the description below. Thank you.